celebrate a part of Black History Month with two African artists, Dennis Brown, Bob Marley. This week we are going at some historical references. Yes, still there in the Black History Month. I'll go forward to some tape we will play from long time, but we'll get the short version of them. Yeah, because we know the span, listening span staying at them time, yeah. You know, first time we used to play all 1.5 hour with one thing. Now we can't do that again. By reach at 10 minutes, you want buck. And that's what them have, you know. That's what them have, believe you me. The Brethren first original soul medics are sing about Haile Selassie. Yes. And you know, say, we come here with Haile Selassie. And we're going to leave with Haile Selassie. All we are going, them could have chat little more. Them could have chat little more. So as we are saying, Black History Month, we hope say you grab a book already and start read something or go up online and do what you call make the book speak for you. Where you can get audio books on online, on YouTube. Yeah man, just put Black History and so much things come up. You're surprised. And we are recommend that. We are recommend say everyone who listens to that program, yeah, should have go up online and put Black History in the search. And anything when you Black History will come up there, you just choose which one you want to tune into. And you can listen to your art content. You understand? That is the beauty about it. You can listen to your art content. Yes, we're there with you. We're in the Black History Month, and in keeping with the Black History Month, we play a tune that is relevant to Black History Month. This is a version of mine from South Africa. South Africa, Mzwaki. Long time we play them, man. A long time we don't play them. Long time. Mzwaki. Today with you. So, we want to play this clip here, you know. We're going to play this clip here by Ben Buchanan. He might talk about the Virgin. So we want you to take a stock, listen. As we said, this is Black History Month, and that's how we do it for years now.
Religion is the deification of a culture. And God is the highest concept one sees within his culture or her culture. Now the devil, in Egypt there is such a thing as a good God and a bad God. It is called the law of opposites. The Chinese and other people call it the yin and the yang. But the good God is no better than the bad God, because you need both things. You need good to know bad and bad to know good. So the law of opposites, you see, it is Judeo-Christian to consider that in this man is good if there wasn't something in him called the devil. And how the devil got in there? Who put the devil in there? They now say sex is the original sin. I'm not going to give it up, sin or not. But all right. Who made the devil? God. Right? Because they say the devil was a good angel in heaven, and he started to try to overplay God, and God kicked him out. Who made him? Just, you see, you got to break things down and analyze and ask yourself, these theories, not facts. Nobody have ever seen a devil. Nobody have ever seen a God. God didn't write a Bible. Man wrote a Bible and put God's name in it. If you have a Bible that God wrote, please let me see it. Because I want to see it. Inspired men of God wrote the Bible. Aren't you inspired when you go to the bathroom? If you don't get an inspiration, you're going to pee all over yourself. You got to be inspired to go to the bathroom and get up from where you at when it's time to pee. You get an inspiration. Or you may get a perspiration. But you see, you are in college. And you must do some thinking. That's why you're in college, to examine anything. You must be inquisitive, and there should be nothing that you can't examine. Nothing. Remember that the Bible that most of us use is one written by under the auspices and control and authority of a man named James I, the King of England, who in 1611 authorized this to be published. But who wrote it? Who were the inspired men? Sir Francis Bacon and 47 other professors from Eton, University of Glasgow in Scotland, Eton University, Cambridge University, Harvard University, and I think one more. Those 47 men working for James rewrote the Gutenberg Bible, written under the control of Martin Luther, who had broken away from Rome in the Edict of Worms. The Gutenberg Bible was a copy of the Reims-Douai version that was dichosed. Don't walk in any kind of rain at all. Because the one that got the rabbit died, got a version. The other one got the real thing. So when you see the word, your Bible marked version, you ain't got the real thing. And they all marked version. Yes, sir.
My question is twofold. And the first part of my question is, what is the original name of continent Africa? It is a name.
Africa was a colony, a little enclave, about the 4th century, when the Greeks would come to Lesbos, now called Libya, to kind of put their ear to hear what was coming out of Egypt, because they were barred from coming in mass. It was not until the Persians captured Egypt in 525 under Cambyses that the Greeks were allowed in any large number. That little colony that the Greeks call Africa later spread to now the entire continent. It started around the 4th dynasty. However, ancient people called the continent Corphy, C-O-R-P-H-Y-E, Ortegia, O-R-T-E-G-Y-A, Hesperia, H-E-S-P-E-R-I-A, Amonis, A-M-M-O-N-I-S, Libya, the whole continent, L-I-B, well, actually it was Lesbos, L-E-B-U-S, and Ethiopia, E-T-H-I-O-P-I-A. However, the oldest documents that I have found by the Ethiopians themselves and the Moors, there is a name they call A-L-K-E-B-U-L-A-N, Alkebulan. And that's the oldest name that I know that the continent was ever called.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Second part of my question is, can you go into details of the Holy Trinity and the Immaculate Conception?
Well, first of all, what is an Immaculate Conception? The ancients never spoke of the hymen, H-Y-M-E-N, a thin membrane, very sensitive because of the nerve endings, that lays on the track of the vaginal canal of a woman, the colloquial expression being cherry. When they spoke of virgin, it coming from the Greek word virgo, meant original. It didn't mean virginity. Thus, when they spoke of a virgin woman, it didn't necessarily mean a woman who had no sexual intercourse with a man. That is the interpretation which the 219 bishops at the Nicene Conference of Bishops put into their concept, their distortion of Immaculate Conception. The ancient Egyptians said that a woman was immaculately conceived when she became pregnant at any one time without confusion as to who she is pregnant for. That means that she isn't running with two men at the same time in the 1 month from one period to the next, and she become pregnant, then she immaculately conceived, honestly, sincerely, without fraud with the man. But he must be in the same condition as her. That pregnancy is an immaculate conception. It is the distortion of that. Origin, O-R-E-G-I-N, one of the bishops at the Conference of Nicaea, an African bishop, in 325 of the Christian era, AD, was the one that put forward the concept that Mary, Goddess Mary, be so canonized as Goddess Aset, which the Greeks call Isis. Listen to the prayer that the Roman Catholics still have. Holy Mary, Mother of God, blessed are the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Listen to this. Holy and hail Isis, Mother of all and of God. Horus, true, perfect, and clean be thy womb. You see where the Mary thing come from? That's why I said they have to suppress the evidence of what happened at the Nicene Conference, because Mary was worshipped before Jesus was worshipped. They demoted Mary to worship her son. Don't forget that Jesus had an older brother by the name of James the Lesser, who became the Bishop of Caliandros. And your Bible says Jesus and his brothers and sisters. Do some thinking. You see, you read what you want to read, and you listen to what you want to hear. Let me give you a puzzle. Who preach the Trinity of God. You heard what I'm saying? And there was no Jesus yet. Akhenaten died in 1359 BC. The Jesus the Christ supposed to have been born only 1985 years ago. Akhenaten is at least, at minimum, died 1359 years before Jesus the Christ. And by the way, I said Jesus the Christ, you may not know it that way. You talk about Jesus Christ as if Christ is the last name. Joshua Christus was the Greek names for that. Christus, translated into English, means the Christ, the anointed one. That's all it means. Nothing sacred. As a matter of fact, people didn't worship Jesus until the Conference of Antioch. They worshiped the womb, the heaven from whence he came. The early people who later were called Christians at the Council of Nicaea in 212 years after he's supposed to have been dead. They worshipped him suddenly. But before that, they worshipped his mama. They worship the womb from where he came, heaven. The Roman Catholic still continues Holy Mary, Mother of God. Blessed are the fruit of your womb, Jesus. Hey, Jesus to worship. But black men follow those Europeans, sick Europeans. They couldn't worship the black woman's vagina no more, where they came from, where their daddy deposited them as a sperm. They couldn't because European is sick and can't worship his woman. Since sex is dirty, according to European thinking. They couldn't worship like the African man worship his goddesses. When you go in the temple of Hathor at a place called Dendera, any one of you who've been there know it pretty well. And you look up in the ceiling, you see they show the African woman not only giving birth to her child, giving birth to the goddesses, but they show that African woman even giving birth to the sun, the S-U-N, the son of the sun. You see the sun in the morning coming up.
Radio station.
Yes, Mzaki out of South Africa. Them call themselves the dub poet of South Africa. Them poetry there. Them poetry there. Yes, as we said, this is Black History Month, and the theme is Black History. And when I started from no slavery, yeah, because a whole lot of people, anytime they talk about Black History Month, they start telling about slavery. I mean, nothing wrong with saying it, but there's more to Africa than slavery. As a matter of fact, slavery catch for 500 years now. Africa exists thousands of years before Europeans even did exist on the planet. Even did exist on the planet. But who know this? The teacher them know this? No. The pastor them know it? No. You know who know it? The big guys them in a room. The big guys them in a room know it because a whole heap of the things them where them cause we believe in and them create that belief. Them create that belief. Because when we are youth, we never know say Egypt is in Africa. We never know that. We never know that because we hear about so much Egypt. Not to mention all Ethiopia. Ethiopia called more in the Bible than Egypt. But we never know about Ethiopia. The only time we kind of get a glimpse of Ethiopia is when Rastaman talk about Ethiopia. And then that was a no-no. You don't want to listen to what the Rastaman say about Ethiopia. Which part that day? My granny used to talk about Timbuktu. But how she talk about Timbuktu? And you do nothing, she said, boy, I'm going to lick you from here to the Timbuktu. And she never know where Timbuktu there. If I did take up a map of Africa, she couldn't show her Timbuktu. But we come and say Timbuktu did have the first university on the planet. Timbuktu in a Mali. That is near West Africa there, so. We did have to come out of school and go do our own reading and researching and listening to come find out these things that we now can come and impart it to the people that them now can go examine it for themselves. Africa is a real place. When I did just start talk about Africa, I never know nobody will ever go to Africa. Never know nobody will go to Africa. No, I find myself I travel to go to Africa many times. I know many people who's Africans. From the east to the west to the north to the south. We know them. And this is where we have to reach. We have to reach a level of consciousness where we find, say, what they taught us is freedom story, is not our story, is his story. And we have to recognize that as a people. We have to recognize it as a people. or else we doom. What me say? We doom. If we make them continue to tell you the same thing over and over, and then I'll print it like says the truth. Yeah, man, them print it. It's like a big movie to them. Yes, big movie to them.
Who existed in history, and they say history is when a people begins to write. That starts their history. That means there is no history for Greece until Homer wrote the Iliad and the... There is no other written record in Europe until Homer wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey.
Which was when?
833 before the Common Era. And Homer said in the Odyssey, quote, the gods Zeus and Apollo came from Ethiopia, unquote. Zeus and Apollo is known as Greece's first two gods. And Homer himself, the first Greek writer, said they came from Ethiopia. The Egyptian writer, Hunefer, Hunefer, in the papyrus of Hunefer said, quote, we came from the beginning of the Nile, where God happy dwells at the foothills of the mountain of the moon, unquote. Secondly, when the Africans wrote and created writing, there was no God Jehovah yet, no Adam and Eve yet. The first Hebrew, Abraham, was not born. Abraham is not born until at best 1346 before the Common Era in the city of Ur in Chaldea. Chaldea is about where modern-day Iraq, just south of it is, where the Tigris and Euphrates meet. Now, when Abraham was born is equivalent to the 13th dynasty, just around the time when a people called the Shepherd Kings, or Hyksos, invaded the northern part of this land, around the delta. And they did not come any further south than a place called Avarice. And they're still in the delta. For instance, Hyksos have never been this far. They have never been as far as Cairo. And Cairo is an old city. The oldest it could go back in Fustat. And it was made by the conquerors during the time of Muhammad Ali. And Muhammad Ali wasn't even an Arab. He was an Albanian who took on the name Muhammad Ali. Now, when he converted to Islam to get the throne. If we go back further, not a single Hebrew was in this land until then, unless he was astray. There was no a single nation. There was nobody named Abraham. Abraham's mother and father did not follow what we call Judaism today. Terah, his father, worshipped an African woman. An African woman you will see right across here, called Hathor. H-A-T-H-A-O, that's the Western spelling. The correct name is Het Heru, H-E-T-H-E-R-O. You will see her and the funerary temple of Queen Makari Hatshepsut. She is sewn as a cow. And when she is sewn as a woman, is an African woman with cow's ears. The best place you will see her is at a temple dedicated solely to her at a place called Dendera. Then you will see thousands of faces of her, especially in the hypostyle hall. The Hebrews in the first book, the book called Genesis, which means first, they showed that Abraham worshipped the golden calf. India call him the sacred cow. But the golden calf is nothing else but goddess Hathor. Now, that's the 13th dynasty. If we go back to find out all that was done by the time of the 13th dynasty here, before the first Asian, there is no European history then. The Etruscans, the first of European, along with the people of Perth, which later became the Romans and the Greeks, are not in history then. That don't say they don't exist, but there are no records of them. There's no record of an Adam or an Eve. Then what? No God, no Jehovah, no Jesus, no Allah. Then.
But the Africans were already...
but African got Ptah. I'm going at random. I could keep knock them off. Let me go. Since African God had goddesses, I mean, they weren't eunuchs or anything like that. So the Africans had Ptah, right? They had Nut. They had Osiris. They had Isis. And by the way, I could use the proper name. When I say Osiris, they had Asaru. When I say Isis, they had Aset. They had his son, the Trinity. They had Asaru's son, Heru or Horus, born of an immaculate concepted mother. He himself born of a virgin birth, which you can see the story at the temple of Setai I at a place called Abydos. And Setai I was a king, 19th dynasty king. The Africans equally had numerous other goddesses and gods. In these things as they may, I will now start to present the documentation. Thousands of years before Adam and Eve. And we know that Adam and Eve is the allegorical characters in the Hebrew book, a book called Genesis. And in order to speak about Adam and Eve, we must then give Adam and Eve a date if we are to say that there were no people before or all people came subsequently. Then we must establish a day for Adam and Eve. It is commonly stated in Western circles, particularly in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, that approximately 6,000 years ago, a God, the Jewish God Jehovah, and if you're Christian, then of course the Christian God Jesus the Christ, and obviously if you're Muslim, then it is the Muslim God Allah, created this world. Now, that is difficult for me to understand when you consider that 6,000 years ago, my people along the Nile were doing engineering, science, law, medicine, and a host of other disciplines. Yet the world wasn't here yet. Now, I do not know which world they were operating under. But then let us explore who could have possibly brought about the concept of an Adam and Eve, since it is that it is only in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam you find these two allegorical characters. Since it is that we find it for the first time in the Hebrew Bible, or Jewish Bible, a Bible called the Chumash, or the Pentateuch, and such other name, as well as the Torah, otherwise called the 5 books of Moses, we would find that the Jews presented this for the first time to the world. We must then find who are the Jews that presented it, since all the Jews did not write it. The first time we have to have the Adam and Eve concept comes out of the Jewish intellectual circle, a system called the Sanhedrin, S-A-N-H-E-D-R-I-N. The Sanhedrin put out that book, or started to write that book, in approximately 700 BC, and completed it around 500 BC. The person to whom they gave credit for the story of bringing into the world the concept of Jehovah, the Jewish God, Yahweh, was a man called Avram, A-V-R-M, who changed his name to Abraham, assuming, we must assume, as he stated, that an angel of this God came to him while at state in a dream. You would find that all of the prophets got their messages by dreams. And all of the other writers got their state of information by dream. Not a solitary one being sober at the time and at a state of consciousness. But we find that Abraham was not born till approximately 1775 BC. This will put Abraham's birth sometime between the 13th dynastic period of the Africans of the Nile Valley. Meaning then, if we are to use the chronological data of most Western European writers, who gave the first dynastic period of Egypt anywhere from about 5000 BC to about 3100 BC, we will find then that at least the first dynasty of the Africans was at minimum more than 1500 years before the birth of the first Jew, Abraham. More so, that Abraham himself, based upon the Jews, along with his own parents, were worshiping an African goddess by the name of Hathor, symbolized by a cow with a sun disk between her horns. The sun disk symbolizing Amen-Ra, the god of the ancient Africans of the Nile, not only Egypt, Amen being the god of the north and Ra being the god of the south. When Nama, this African king, fought Scorpio, the other king, the king to the north, himself to the south, defeated Scorpio, joined the two states into one, making one Egypt, or the beginning of dynastic Egypt. That combination of the two states, bringing the two concepts of God, Amen and Ra, created for the Egyptians and others in that area a single unity, a single deity by the name of Amen-Ra. Now, the Africans along the Nile, and in particular Egypt, had already worshipped a god by the name of Ptah, or Ptah, P-T-A-H. Ptah was the god prior to the first dynasty and the prominent god up until the third dynasty. Sometime around the third dynasty, we find that the ancient Africans of Egypt, otherwise called Egyptians today, introduced another god, and that was the god Amen-Ra. Well, let us go farther. Along with the introduction of Ptah and Amen-Ra were other sources of information relating to deity. One, it was at that time that the Africans revised their sacred book, their Bible, a book called the Book of the Coming Forth by Day and by Night, to which an Englishman by the name of Ernest A. Wallace Budge, in its translation from the hieratic writing, one of the most ancient writings today by the Africans, part of what is today called hieroglyph, Budge translating that did not take the literary translation of the title, but took one of these, we would say, titles that would draw attention and call it the Egyptian Book of the Dead. In the Egyptian Book of the Dead, using Budge's description for it, we will find an important section. That section is called the Osirian Drama. Osiris was in the extology of the ancient Africans of the Nile, the god who was the direct son. This one should bring a lot of attention to most of you. The direct son of the god Amen-Ra, or Ptah, depending on what period of time you're speaking about. Osiris was the god whose mother had him by a virgin birth, whose mother conceived him by an immaculate conception. I am speaking about 4,100 years before Jesus the Christ. May I repeat that because it may be difficult for many of you. I said that Osiris, the god I'm speaking about, who is sometimes said to be simultaneously Horus, and at other times the father of Horus. Irrespective, let us replace him with Horus. And he becomes the father of Horus. Therefore, what we have here is that the father Osiris, the son of the god Ptah, had a child who was supposedly conceived by his mother, the goddess Isis, and who gave birth to Horus by a virgin birth 4,100 years before Mary did the same thing again. Now this should be difficult to a lot of you born-again Christians, because you have been told that the first and only time that such a story was told was 1982 years ago. Let me not disappoint you further by saying that Jesus is the last of 16 such crucified saviors.
Balancing truth and the controversy, addressing the youth and their calamity, motivated by concern for the whole of our liberty, the promise of a new reality, the cutting edge of true intensity, sole provider for the whole of our family, the force of brutal non-conformity, the cutting edge.
I apologize for being black, for all I am plus all I lack. Please, sir, please, ma'am, give me some slack, cause I apologize. I apologize for being poor, for being sick and tired and so. Since I ain't slick, don't know the scope, I do apologize. I apologize because I bear resemblance most black people share. Thick lips, flat nose, and nappy hair. Yes, I apologize. I apologize for how I look, for all the lows and blows I took. On those, Lord knows I'd close the book as I apologize. I apologize for all I gave, for letting you make me your slave and go into my early grave. Yes, I apologize. I apologize for being caught, for being sold, for being bought, while being told I count for naught. Yeah, I apologize. I apologize for all I've done, for all my toil out in the sun. Don't want to spoil your righteous fun, so I apologize. I apologize and curse my kind for being fooled, for being blind, for being ruled and in your bind. Yes, I apologize. I apologize and curse my fate for being slow, for being late, because I know it's me you hate. Why not apologize? I apologize and tip my hat, cause you so rich and free and fat, son of a bitch, that's where it's at, and I apologize.
RFM, #1 reggae station in the whole wide world, me not joke. Radio.
Black History Month, right through the month, yes, and the next month and the next month. You know, so that's how we do it.
When the Loa Legba enters the home floor,
Edward Brathwaite.
The drum leaks tears and raindrops of sound. It is not, it is not, it is not, it is not, it is not enough. It is not enough to be free of the red, white, and blue, of the dragon. It is not, it is not, It is not enough. It is not enough to be free of malarial fevers, fear of the hurricane, fear of invasions, crops, drought, fires, blisters upon the cane. It is not enough. It is not enough to tinkle to work on a bicycle bell when hell crackles and burns in the 14-inch screen of the Japanese constructed Unite Fruit Company imported hard sell telltale television set, rhinocerously knobbed, cancerously chewed. It is not enough. It is not enough to be able to fly to Miami, structure skyscrapers, excavate the moonscape seashore sands to build hotels, casinos, sepulchres. It is not enough. It is not enough to be free to bulldoze God's squatters from their tunes, from their relics, from their tombs of drums. It is not enough to pray to Barclays bankers on the telephone, to Jesus Christ by shortwave radio, to the United States Marines by rattling your hip bones. It is not enough. It is not enough. I must be given words to shape my name to the syllables of trees. I must be given words to refashion futures like a healer's hand. I must be given words so that the bees in my blood's buzzing brain of memory will make flowers, will make flocks of birds, will make sky, will make heaven, the heaven open to the thunderstone and the volcano and the unfolding land. It is not. It is not. It is not. It is not. It is not enough. It is not enough to be paused, to be whole, to be void, to be silent, to be semicolon, to be semi-colony. Fling me the stone that will confound the void. Find me the rage, and I will raise the colony. Fill me with words. It is not, and I will blind your God. Atibon legba, Atibon legba, ouvrez bail pour moi, ouvrez bail pour moi.
Yes, we are the ones we've been waiting for. When I go around and I try to look some history, person out of history to come save you. No. You have to save yourself in this time, and we are the ones. I am my ancestor. Yes, and my ancestors, if I never exist, there will be no argument of no ancestor. And if my ancestor never exists, I wouldn't be here. So it's a reciprocation of thinking and thought. And we have to find that ancestral legacy inside our way. Because it's we are waiting for, you know. Yeah, man. And we are the Taki and the Nani and the Kojo and the Sakazulu and the Nzinga. All of them. Are we? We never gone away. With the righteous, so we are the ones we've been waiting for. It's not another. Marcus Garvey. Are we? Yes. I hope you're there when we still, you know. Because we're there, said we here. I go through the PSAs. Listen to this.
King of Belgium created a slave colony for 30 years. The CIA assassinated your first popular leader, Mr. Lumumba. Glencore and others now suck out your cobalt without giving you tax income. We have a world food system.
This is Jeffrey Sachs, an American professor of economics, talking about the unspeakable facts about Africa. From their faces, notice how the moderator and the speakers on stage are uncomfortable.
Hey, call me Louis. This is my spot. Louis spot.
Thank you very much. What we've been hearing is how the system actually works right now. And I want to emphasize we have a world food system.
As you can see, it starts smooth. And at this point, no one, absolutely no one, is really prepared for what is about to come out of Jeffrey's mouth. And that is what makes this clip forever legendary. First, he talks about the world food system. Who really runs the global food agenda?
We have a world food system. It's based on large multinational companies. It's based on private profits. It's based on a very, very low measure of international transfers to help poor people, sometimes none at all. It's based on extreme irresponsibility of powerful countries with regard to the environment. And it's based on a radical denial of rights of poor people, as we just heard. It's interesting, we heard from the Minister of DRC, what's wrong with your country?
Remember when I told you earlier to check their reactions? Well, she's the one that asked the minister earlier what was wrong with Congo. Jeffrey Sachs had to remind her.
What's wrong with your country? Well, we don't even start by saying the King of Belgium created a slave colony for 30 years. The government of Belgium ran the slave colony for another 40 years. The CIA assassinated your first popular leader, Mr. Lumumba, and then installed another dictatorship for the next 30 years. And then Glencore and others now suck out your cobalt without giving you tax income. We don't reflect on that. We say, what's wrong with you? Why don't you govern properly? And so we have a system, but we need a different system. We cannot turn this over to the private sector. We already did about 100 years ago. Not only to the private sector with the U.S. military behind it, with the defense of these property rights in the Minister of Honduras's country, where United Fruit ran the country for a long time. And their attorney was the foreign minister of the United States, Secretary Dulles, and his brother was the head of the CIA and overthrew the next door neighbor, Mr. Arbenz, to make sure that United Fruit could have its property. So we have a system, but we need a different system. And the different system has to be based on principles of human dignity in the Universal Declaration, principles of sovereignty, principles of economic rights, because these are not nice things to do. In 1948, all the government said that food is a right, social protection is a right, not a nice thing, not a pleasant thing, a right. That was 73 years ago. The SDGs are nothing more than our generation's attempt to honor the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So we're in a world that's really tough. The private sector's not going to solve this problem. I'm sorry to say to all of the private sector leaders, behave, pay your taxes, follow the rules. That's what you should do.
Jeffrey goes on to prove that he's a better economist by not only criticizing, but also giving 3 solutions to the problem. First, he talks about representation of Africans.
And what the governments should do is the following. They won't, but they should. First, the G20 should become the G21 by inviting systemically the chairperson of the African Union and the African Union to be the 21st country. The European Union is a member of the G20 as the EU. If you add the AU as the 21st for the G21, you add 1.4 billion people to representation at that crucial event. That will change decisively the discussion because 1.4 billion people are not at the table for finance right now, and they need to be. So my first recommendation is the G21. I love the G20. Add one seat, 1.4 billion people with the AU represented.
Jeffrey then wants the lending capacity of poor countries to be increased at near zero interest.
Second, we need an order of magnitude change of development finance. The rich countries just borrowed $17 trillion for COVID. The poor countries, nothing. Because the rich countries can borrow at zero, and the poor countries pay 5 or 10% coupon rates or have no access at all. So the world exposed its grotesque inequality this past year and a half. Rich countries didn't say, we tighten our belts, why don't you? My country spent $7 trillion of emergency funding, not one penny for anybody else, by the way. $7 trillion, it didn't even cross the imagination of the U.S. Congress to include a few crumbs for the rest of the world. But the poor countries cannot borrow. That's what we should have heard from the World Bank. I didn't hear that from the World Bank. I didn't hear real numbers. Real numbers are in trillions right now because the world economy is $100 trillion a year. But we don't talk about real numbers. But my job, all I know in this world is long division. Divide by 100 trillion and then see whether you're talking about something real or not. So that's the second thing. We need massively to increase the lending and borrowing capacity of poor countries at near zero interest rates like the rich countries have. Then they could get something done.
Finally, he talks about the United Nations at the core of the food system and not any other superpower country that runs things as they so please.
The final thing is we need the UN as the core and central institution of this world, period. Because this is the only way we're going to have a civilized world is a strong UN. And it cannot be that the whole UN budget is less than my neighborhood's budget in New York. The UN core budget this year is $3 billion. New York City's budget is $100 billion. And then we say, why don't things work well? Because the rich are hoarding everything.
As a bonus, Jeffrey talks to billionaires.
Final point, rather than our 3 billionaires going in space, well, they could go into space and stay there and leave their money behind. That would be one idea. But another idea is we have 2,775 billionaires on the current list. Their combined net worth, 2,700, is $13.1 trillion. Now, I have it on good authority, you don't need more than $1 billion to be comfortable. But they have an excess of $11 trillion over just the $1 billion. So we should be taxing that and having a civilized world.
RFM, #1 reggae station in the whole wide world.
Year on hair. $54 million a year on hair. We spend $152 million a year on perfume. We spend $700 million a year. This is just black people. $700 million a year on liquid soap. We are clean while living dirty. So you smell good, your hair looks good, your nails are good, you got brand new church clothes, and you got all of that with no insurance. You got all of that with no stocks. You got all of that with no investment portfolio, but you smell good. We just keep buying a bunch of crap.
Yes, take a break and come forward.
Now, I found out that the Greeks, who were supposed to have been the founders of civilization because they were the first civilized white coast, but the Greeks got their civilization from the Egyptians, and the Egyptians were black people, and the Greeks passed their civilization on to the Romans. They couldn't retain it, they lost it. They had a dark age in Europe for 500 years. And then another bunch of Africans, the Moors from North Africa, moved into Spain and started civilization all over again. So instead of Europe civilizing Africa, Africa has civilized Europe 2 times. They said that the earth was flat like a pancake out in the vastness of space with the sun and the moon and all the stars going around it. The ancient Egyptians in the Pyramid Age 6,000 years ago knew that the world was round. They knew that it went around the sun in 365 and 1/4 days. They measured the circumference of the earth, and they calculated it so accurately until modern astronomers said their error was only 1 yard. Circumference of the earth is about 25,000 miles, and they calculated it with an error of about this, 1 yard. African history. The reason I'm talking to you about it is because it's not in the textbooks. And it's not in the textbooks because we don't write textbooks. We have other people write the textbooks, and they put that propaganda in there, and we are supposed to swallow it.
Brothers and sisters, this is Onyx, and I want to share a piece that I wrote a few years ago called Immaculate Misconception. Sister J was kind enough to allow me to put this on her page, so here is Immaculate Misconception. From motherland to foreign land, from beaded necklaces to chains, from Africans to Americans, from warriors to slaves, from ritual to religion, from culture to Christ. From my shade to amen, they said Jesus died for our sins. How can we believe their white God died to save our black skin? Knowing they hate us the way that they do, they'd never worship a God they didn't believe hated us too. We choose to worship their God. We worship it more than they do. Yet our ancestors suffered, their masters tortured and beat them, made them bow to their knees and surrender to Jesus. But we don't honor our ancestors for the blood that they shed. We sit in church crying with Christians because Jesus suffered and bled. We don't look to our history for truth. We look to their Bible instead. But it's time for truth to be spoken. Something's got to be said. Something's got to be said. It's time we tear down their lie. Something's got to be said. It's time we do more than survive. Something's got to be said, for it's time we remember we're not African Americans, blacks, colors, or niggers. We're African people who strayed way too far. We're African people. We deny that we are because flowing like poison, their religion has spread, growing like cancer by our ignorance fed. We've been manipulated, lied to, deceived, and misled to the point that our ancestors' voices are dead. It's time we connect with our ancestors, disconnect their religion. Our ancestors were Africans before they were Christians. Our ancestors were Africans before they were slaves. It's time we start living and thinking the African way. In spite of what we've been taught, it's time to forget what we learned. It's time for truth to be spoken, but for truth to be heard, something's got to be said to cause our thinking to change. Somebody's got to say something. I've got something to say. Before Adam and Eve, before Abel and Cain, long before Noah's Ark, before the floods and the rains, before Abraham, Isaac, Moses, Joseph, and Jacob, before Samson, Delilah, Goliath, and David, before the prodigal son returned to his home, before the children of Israel for 40 years roamed, before resurrection, redemption, rebirth, and religion, before Christians created chaos and division, before a biblical fairy tale was accepted as true, before the Testament old, before a Testament new, there was Osar and Aset, Heteru, Gab, and Sebek, Heru, Seker, Tahudi, Amen, Herikahudi, and Ma'at were the principles guiding our ancestors' lives. Not a religion whose God was hung on a cross left to die. Our ancestors listened to spirit, and by spirit were led. Not by a book trimmed in gold, words of Christ written in red. Our ancestors walked in and lived in a spiritual dimension beyond Jesus Christ's understanding or their God's comprehension. By the time a virgin named Mary gave birth to a Savior named Jesus, our ancestors had constructed the Sphinx and built the pyramids of Egypt. Their white folks stole us and sold us and told us, surrender. They called us unworthy, called us ungodly sinners. They told us our God was a heathen and we practiced a pagan religion. Their God commanded they practice a form of cannibalism. Taking Holy Communion in remembrance of his death, they drank their God's blood. They ate their God's flesh. They arrested innocent women, put them in prison, charged them with crimes they'd never committed. In the name of their pagan religion, they told lies so convincing when they put these women on trial, no one would defend them. These women healed those who were sick before modern medicine existed through a method of healing which we call holistic. Yet these daughters and wives and mothers of children were unjustly tried and unjustly sentenced. And it was the Christians who preached, thou shalt not bear false witness, who falsely accused them and convicted them as witches. It was the Christians who judged them and sentenced them to die. It was Christians who tied them to stakes and burned them alive. It was Christians who said they were evil and followers of Satan. It was the Christians who murdered those women in Salem. And the same Christian who started the witch hunt crusades wrote the Bible they lived by. His name was King James, meaning the God of the Christians allowed his words to be written by hands washed in the blood of innocent women. And in this Bible we trust that never acknowledges us. Not from the first word in Genesis to the last word in Revelations does their Bible mention our people, our history, our nation. Not one chapter, one verse, not one scripture, one sentence. So how could their God have created Africans in his image? Because if their Bible is true, Africans never existed. Their Bible says by his power, Jesus raised up the dead. Their Bible says by his power, 5,000 people were fed. Their Bible says by his power, Jesus turned water to wine. He healed those who were crippled, gave sight to the blind. By his power, he opened deaf ears and the mute may speak. But where does it say by his power, he unshackled our ancestors' feet? Where does it say by his power that he set our ancestors free? Where does it explain why his power still ain't set us free? We're not free as a people because we're still believing their lie. They don't need to shackle our feet. Their religion has shackled our minds. I don't care what you believe. They believe in a God with white skin. And if it's their God that you're serving, it makes no difference to them whether we're saved or we're slaves. It really don't matter. Because in their minds, we're still serving a white man as our master. So if you believe you're a Christian, if you believe John 3:16, if you believe their God is your God and his death set you free, then why did your God perform miracles and free the children of Israel, never even attempted to free your African people? Why did your God curse the Egyptians and take their riches away and let the Christians get wealthy, selling your ancestors as slaves? If their God, who's your God, loved you so much he died, then explain this to me. Tell me why your God freed the children of Israel from slavery by killing all the firstborn Egyptians. But when your ancestors were in bondage, enslaved by the Christians, when Christian hands locked their shackles and Christian hands held the keys, why didn't your God kill their firstborn to set your ancestors free? And if hanging Jesus on a cross was to save you and me, who are our ancestors saving as they hung from the trees? If Jesus saved us by suffering in hell for 3 days and 3 nights, who are our ancestors saving by suffering each day of their life? If beating Jesus with a whip was to save us from sin, who are our ancestors saving as whips tore open their skin? Who are our great-grandmothers saving as they were raped and violated? Who are our great-grandfathers saving as they were stripped and castrated? Why were our ancestors tortured? Why were our ancestors slaves? They suffered far more than Jesus, but not even themselves could they save. So how can we, instead of sin, spit in our ancestors' face by serving a God who ignored them as they screamed for his mercy and grace? How can we, instead of sin, call Christians our sisters and brothers when they they snatched our African babies out of the arms of our African mothers. How can we as their descendants bow down and give praise to the God of a people who stole our language, our name, stole our culture, our heritage, our spirit, our will, then in our face shoved their Bible and told us, thou shalt not steal? How can we as their descendants, the God of our ancestors, reject? They give out glory and honor and praise and respect to a cross they burned as they slip ropes around our ancestors' necks. How can we as their descendants believe Christianity could save us when the Christians who preached it were the ones who enslaved us?
Balance is your African pride. That is the question. And we really have to keep ramming it and ramming it. Can't afford feet just fall upon weed up land. It have to deal with cultivating it. We have to cultivate it, man. That's why we do it this way. Because we say if we don't do it this way, we don't know when we're going to do it. Yeah, man. We can't ease up. We can't ease up at all. This is not the time for ease up. This is the time for push evil harder now. Faster. Yes. Because you don't see what them doing. You don't see what them doing. You must be blind.
And most of what they say is true. But it's not true about most black men. This is bad-mouthing black men. And most of what they say is true. But it's not true about most black men. This is a praise song. Hum a little Billy Harper if you want to. But up out of my heart, which ain't no easy place, I give thanks for the births of all the black, brown, and beige brothers who struggled to get out of that birth canal and have since never tried to re-enter. Give thanks to all the brothers who know and have always known the value of family, as opposed to dropping seeds in every reachable field of glory. Give thanks to all the brothers who accompany their women into the delivery rooms to witness and participate in the positive welcoming of their newborn into this world. Give thanks to brothers who actively join in controlling births and preventing diseases. Give thanks to brothers who work unbelievably effed up jobs to secure the needs of their families, especially the ones who thought about running but never could. Give thanks to brothers who cook and clean and change diapers without fear of their penises falling off. Give thanks to brothers who take care of their children. Give thanks for brothers who are actively involved in the development of their children, who know their highs and lows, their likes and dislikes. Special thanks to the brothers who manage this irregardless of their relationships with the mothers. Give thanks to the brothers who save other brothers' harvest, who take the mother and therefore take the children, whether they are liked by them or not. These brothers don't come in masses, but are many enough to mention. Give thanks to the brothers who have no children, but who treat all of our children like they are really all ours. And instead of worrying them about the when of fatherhood, we should be grateful for the love they do share. Give thanks for brothers who love and respect their mothers, and therefore love and respect black womanhood. Give thanks to brothers who let a woman be herself without trying to mold her or shape her into a piss-poor imitation of a white girl. Give thanks to brothers who like the women they sleep with and who don't sleep with women they don't like. Give thanks for the brothers who have taken the time and the care to patch up the injuries on the hearts of sisters who ran head on into the wrong nigger. Give thanks for brothers who let their black women be their friends without trying to seduce them further on down the road. Give thanks to brothers who don't take advantage of women even when they know they can. Those who pass up the opportunities to pimp no matter how available they may be. Give thanks to the brothers who have never, ever raised their hands against a woman. Let me just back up and give them a little bit more thanks on that. Give thanks to brothers who oppose rape first in their hearts and who defend black women without having to know them. I'm talking about those stalking moments when sisters ask unknown brothers to walk with them or watch them to their cars, and the average blood who gives her that coverage without a pause. Give thanks to the brothers who resisted and do resist enslavement through drugs, and for the lesser heroes, give thanks also for those who are enslaved but yet warn others about the wicked possibilities. Give thanks for brothers who love other brothers without fear of freakiness. Give thanks to brothers who tell the police nothing. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow too. Divine thanks to those who will die and have died rather than betray black secrets. Give thanks to brothers who receive fame and yet remain beautifully true to the race and its image. Give thanks for the brothers who are self-employed and the inspiration they give us all as we struggle to be self-reliant. And give everlasting thanks to any and all brothers who have paid the extravagant cost of being brothers, no matter how high the bill.